Today, the CDC director says racism is a serious public health crisis that needs to be addressed. And you're going to want to hear what some states are doing to protect you from these federal gun grabbers. We've got a lot coming up, and it starts right now. Happy Friday. Welcome to the news and why it matters. I'm Sarah Gonzalez. If I'm looking like it's not actually a happy Friday, that's because it's not. I'm just ready for the weekend, I'd just like to say. I'm joined today by Eric July, BlazeTV contributor, and also YouTube host. So it's a YouTube day. We've got Young Ripa59 here, Eric July from YouTube, and we've also got John Doyle back in the house.
Taking over.
Yes, yeah, taking over the world. I mean, until you guys get banned from YouTube for being conservative.
Fair enough.
And then you're just going to disappear from everyone's. I'm sorry, I don't want to depress you with that. So we'll get into
for Happy Friday.
We'll get into the headlines. All right. So yesterday, Dr. Rochelle Walensky, who is the CDC director, said that racism is a serious public health threat. The CDC actually echoed this on its website, claiming that racism is a systemic problem. They said to build a healthier America for all, we must confront the systems and policies that have resulted in the generational injustice that has given rise to racial and ethnic health inequities. And of course, this is actually the largest federal agency to make this sort of a declaration that racism is a public health crisis, it is systemic, and they go on to talk about how it negatively affects the mental and physical health of millions of people, blah, 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 which I'm sure is true. It's just that that's not really what's happening in this country. Of course, I don't want to let you white-splain to Eric here, so I'm going to let Eric go first because we don't want to. Eric, please tell us how oppressed you are.
Yes, I will.
Well, first of all, before we get into it, have you been able to get an ID? Have you been able to obtain some sort of ID?
Kind of prevents me from doing so.
I mean, I heard that you were too stupid to find out how to.
That's exactly how it works. I somehow have all these guns and stuff, but somehow.
Well, those are stolen, obviously.
Oh, that's right. At the gun show, I got it for the gun show where I didn't have to get the loophole. The gun show loophole is what I got. No, but look, the fact that the CDC is, which again, the D stands for disease, if I'm not mistaken. So you think that we wouldn't be
disease control and prevention.
I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't getting that incorrect there. But they're talking about racism, which has absolutely nothing to do with that. It goes to show how much lunacy this is. Although it's been at the federal level in terms of this ridiculous approach to try to reach is more so what it is. So what they do is they have this ending point. How they get there doesn't even matter. They'll start wherever they can. Anything is racist. And they'll try to track it all the way back. And in this case, they're talking about this medical inequity. And let's even assume that was the case. What the hell does that have to do with CDC? Nothing. It has nothing to do with anything. All that is just perpetuating this idea that they've, again, trying to emphasize it as the problem that it really actually is not. I think this is a hump that we've long gotten over, but they can't get over the fact. And a lot of these race hustlers have, unfortunately, got positions of power within the government, and that's what they're doing to utilize. And this is the popular thing to do these days, is just talk about racism, because there's Klansmen at every single corner, and it's an epidemic or a pandemic, depending on how you want to describe it. And these Klansmen, you just can't get enough of them. I was on my way up to up to the office today, and I just parked the car, and there was like 6 of them just sitting out there waiting for me to get out, because they act as if that's actually how it goes down, but it's not. Look, I don't know how many more times I have to say this. When you look at something like that, I agree. This institutionalized problem that exists, it ain't with more so the racism. It's that this is an institutional problem when it goes to the corruptness and how they will hyper-emphasize racism. That doesn't get rid of until people start talking about ending these institutions as they are. But that's not going to be on the top of the list for them. I've encouraged it. I don't know what it's going to take for the Republicans to get it. If decentralization and defunding shot to the top of of platform. Let's say of the GOP, for example, which is really the only other party aside from the Democrats that's, let's say, politically viable. Let's say that shot to the top of their platform, if you will. That's when we start addressing problems like that, or that rather is not allowed to manifest. But unfortunately, we get, as I've mentioned on the show, I think twice this week, we get to talking about the symptoms and trying to snap the Band-Aids, getting the right person, which is probably what some quack GOPers is probably thinking right now. Well, we want the CDC to continue to exist, but we need to have the right people. No. Like, this is a problem, and the only people that benefit from this are those. You're ensuring their power structure. So when you look at that and you're like, how crazy has this gotten? How do we get rid of this? Well, you have to go to the source of the problem. When y'all ready to have that conversation, America, the libertarian here at the table is ready to have it with you.
I think it's funny, too, how they referenced mental health in that, because there was longitudinal data that started being recorded in the 1970s when this sort of rhetoric started to infiltrate academia, particularly towards white students, like teaching them that they're inherently racist because of the color of their skin. And it actually established a causal link proving that negatively affects the mental health of white people. Not that that matters or anything like that.
No.
I feel as though I have to speak on behalf of my people for a second.
Well, enough about your white privilege, John.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, also, Eric, you mentioned this is the CDC. What business do they have talking about racism?
Crazy, man.
Well, I think the way that they are trying to interlink the two together now, very sloppily, I'll say, but they're saying, well, Hispanics and blacks have a higher prevalence of obesity. And we're seeing with we're seeing with the COVID pandemic, they are more likely to suffer worse outcomes. Right, that's because of the obesity. That's because of the poor health choices. But then they're linking those to racism because they don't have the ability to get to the place where they have the choices that white people have. So I guess there have been Hispanic and black cafeterias that we've been supposed to have been going to that I just haven't seen.
I was not aware.
It's amazing.
Completely unaware.
So not taking culture into account of any of this.
That's not even a thing to them. Because that is a look. It's a thing. It's a reality of the situation. We know how we eat. The food that we generally consume probably isn't the best when it comes to let's say getting the fat off or keeping it off of your body.
My grandma had a tub of lard in her kitchen at all times.
And I ate all the foods generally associated with soul food and stuff like that. And that's what we eat, and that has to be taken into consideration.
Right.
But unfortunately, instead of addressing the problem, this is why I guess I have a very long list of reasons why I hate the government, but this is certainly one of them, in which it rids responsibility of any sort of individual.
Yes.
The emphasis is always on the collective.
Yep.
And it's always, of course, the government has to come and do something to save you.
Right.
Never do we look at problems that exist, whether it be in this community or that community, and we look at it and say, okay, maybe you can change it. Maybe you could have been changed it. You just chose not to. And that should be liberating. I mean, it is to me. I mean, when I look at their world and I see that I have problems and I look at, okay, well, I caused them, to me, that'd be a liberating thing. To those weirdos, it's offensive.
Right.
But the fact that, okay, maybe they can actually solve this problem. Maybe it's not some overarching racism or something. Maybe it's just a cultural issue that, albeit got there voluntarily, albeit that even if it's a bad result, doesn't mean that there was some sort of racism that was there in play that got them to where they are. And I'd be the first one to admit that in these communities, definitely in black communities, and we deal with definitely in black men, in these heart diseases and all sorts of things. And a lot of that has to do with some of the things that we consume, or if not the vast majority of it. But that's a cultural issue, like you mentioned. One of which the government has absolutely no business being anything near, because I bet you lots of money, they'll make it worse.
I'm pretty sure even in the list of countries that are most obese, I think Mexico is right up there with the United States, which means that our racism is so pernicious that it is actually international to where it is spreading into other countries. And so maybe we could get the CDC to build the wall to prevent the racism from seeping in. Yeah, shut down the supply lines so that all of the food can't get into Mexico because it's just making them fat racistly.
That's how we do it.
Yeah.
Well, it is interesting because, and I do want to get to the clip in a second, just kind of tying all of this racism idea in with a good friend of the program, Beto O'Rourke, and one of the Castro brothers. But, you look at all of these people who are pouring in through our borders and trying to say, well, we need to claim asylum because their conditions are so horrible. And it's you're eating. Like, I don't mean to be, you know, but blunt, but it just is what it is. It's like, I mean, Venezuela, look at how much weight they've lost like a ton of weight. All their people, they're literally starving to death. They're eating cats and dogs. They have nothing to eat. I'm sorry, but I have a hard time believing that you're that bad off if you're obviously obese when you're trying to come across the border. Maybe it's just me. I don't know. Or maybe I'm just the only one who says it out loud. I don't know. But let me get your thoughts, gentlemen, on one of the Castro brothers. I don't know. They're both equally terrible, so I'm not going to dignify him with identifying whether it's Joaquin or Julian. But one of the Castro brothers and a good friend, Robert Francis O'Rourke, were on MSNBC just a couple days ago talking about this Georgia law, which, as Eric knows, as a black man, it is basically Jim Crow 2.0. He can't go vote. It's Jim Eagle, which is like way above Jim Crow. And it's hard for him because he can't use the same restrooms. He can't go to the same places. It's very, very hard. But this is kind of scary. I'm joking about this, but this is kind of scary because now their talking point has become, well, actually, we need to put more pressure on the corporations to do more early on to stop legislatures from passing things like secure election reform bills. Watch.
The good news, though, and why it's so important that folks like Congressman O'Rourke have been out there calling on companies to say something, is that whereas in Georgia, it was great the Delta Airlines came out against the legislation, but you know what? They did it too late. The legislation had already passed. The difference here is that we still have a chance to stop this legislation in Texas. That's why it's so important for whether it's AT&T or Southwest Airlines or USAA or any number of big Texas companies to use their resources and their influence to stop this.
Oh my God, that's what we need, John, is more corporations delving into politics and making statements and sending us emails, filling up our inboxes, letting us know how they feel about literally every single political situation that happens.
Yeah, the right's in a really weird position right now because we've spent the better part of the last 40 years basically shilling for these like huge corporations under the premise of like maybe some Henry Hazlitt economic theory written in the 1940s. And now all of a sudden they're like betraying us and taking away Mr. Potato Head and Oreo's like pro-trans. Or just like, wait a minute, you weren't supposed to do that.
They were like, we said you were people too.
Yeah, like we're supposed to be your allies there, but it turns out they just like don't care.
Yeah. Eric?
No, I mean, this is what fascism is, guys. For guys that don't seem to understand what it is, they think that, again, it's just somebody with an R next to their name saying bad, mean things in Twitter. That's not what fascism is. Fascism is the merging of corporate and state. Nothing outside of the state, everything in it. So when you have, let's say, because he's talking about this like he's using their, let's say, political platform, which is not actually a political platform, but he's telling them, or rather advising them, to use that in order to get what it is that they want in this guy. Now, in this case, they're talking about staving off, in a lot of cases, pass new legislation or something of that nature. That's what that actually is. Now, of course, we sit here and we have our complaints about powerful entities, be it airlines, be it tech companies that sit here and take obviously biased positions. I mean, if you looked at, let's say, the campaign donations by way of a lot of these big companies, they were pretty much all slanted one way. It wasn't a secret or anything. This is why it's hilarious that people would dare act like there's like not any sort of bias when it comes to this. That is something that has to get addressed. But I have long told, libertarians have long said that when we talk about some of these corporate entities, they are the biggest beneficiaries of the state. We have been saying that, so I have no problem going out there and demonizing who did he say, Southwest Airlines and any of
Delta,
that. They're doing exactly what I expect them to do because they are the biggest beneficiaries of the state.
So let me ask you guys this before we go to break. Are you an MLB fan? Do you watch baseball at all?
Yeah, on occasion.
Are you going to attend any games? Are you making a conscious decision not to? Because I know this has been a long
all it does is, like, for me, I'm just not I'm not as interested as I once was. And it's not necessarily because of the law itself. It's because they're taking political stances, and that's not what I watch baseball for.
Well, and that's my question, because I do know a lot of conservatives who, football, the NFL, all the kneeling pissed them off, but for some reason they kept watching. Now I have been seeing a lot of people finally draw their line in the sand and say, you know what, I'm done. I'm not watching MLB.
You lost everybody.
Yeah. So, John, what are your thoughts?
I've always thought of, like, I like sports and I think competition is good, but I've always thought of it as kind of like politically correct tribalism. So, like, the average American man will be told that he's not allowed to be proud of his country and he's not allowed to be proud of his religion. So he'll hear all this negative propaganda criticizing his forefathers, his ancestors, his heritage, his God. But then he'll just sit there and take that. But then, well, now what'd you say about the Astros? Like, that's like his line of defense with that. And so it's kind of weird because we can't have pride in like our cities or our communities or our church or anything. But like, oh yeah, we've got our sports teams and that's like the last thing we have. And then now they're taking that from us too.
Yeah. This is kind of depressing, guys. I need to find some good news. It's hard to find good news of the day. It's hard to come by. All right, we got more to come. First, we want to thank our sponsor, Bonner Wines. Now, you guys know me as like the kind of conservative health nut. So you may be thinking, why is Sarah here talking about wines? Well, first of all, because I drink wine way too often, okay, and I love wine. But second of all, because this particular wine from Bonner, they've got the best Malbecs that you can have, and they are very healthy, okay? So let me tell you, if you are looking to merge health and have an excuse to drink wine, listen up, people, all right? These are made, the vineyards that they grow the grapes at are at like 9,000 feet. And it turns out that these grapes, they've lab tested the wines, and it has resveratrol up to 10 times the regular levels of regular wines, and it pops up again and again in studies for longevity, heart health, brain health. By the way, these wines also have 90% less sugar, fewer chemicals, fewer additives. So when I say you're drinking a healthy wine, you are doing it for your health. You are doing it for your health, okay? And I'm giving you the excuse to go to cowgirlwine2021.com right now. They're giving you 50% off of their best Malbecs. You're also going to get 50% off of shipping if you go there. There's no better reason to do it than your health. You're welcome. It is cowgirlwine2021.com. These shipments are going really fast, so you're going to want to go there, cowgirlwine2021.com. All right, yesterday on the program, we covered Biden's announcement on his 6 executive actions he is taking on gun control. But let me just play for you a comment that Joe Biden made on, they talk about we referred to it earlier in the program, the gun show loophole. There's no background checks. We need more background checks. So let's listen from the White House in their own words. Watch.
These bills, one, require background checks for anyone purchasing a gun at a gun show or an online sale. Most people don't know it. You walk into a store and you buy a gun, you have a background check. But you go to a gun show, you can buy whatever you want and no background check.
Which, and online too. I mean, I love when I buy my guns on Amazon. You get that Amazon Prime delivery.
2-day shipping with the MG249.
Yeah, it really makes my Amazon Prime membership worth it.
Yeah,
I feel like all the guns that I'm getting. But let me, so the White House press secretary, Jen Psaki, was asked about this later on. Here is what she had to say.
Is it the president's belief that you do not have to undergo a background check when you are at a gun show?
No, it's not his belief. He believes that background checks should be universal.
That wasn't really
He says no background check.
Well, we know what his position is, right? So let me reiterate that, which is that gut background checks are something that should be universal. They're supported by more than 80% of the public. He's supported legislation, advocated for that, and advocated against loopholes as well. So that's his position, and I appreciate you asking for the clarification.
Oh, well, I mean, obviously.
She didn't answer the question.
No. Well, she never does.
That's very true.
How can you answer for Joe Biden's
And I don't even think she knows
gaffes,
half
though?
the time what he's thinking.
No.
That's why she has circles back as much as she does. Look, they know. Well, I want to give Biden a little more credit than he probably deserves. But at least, rationally speaking, any individual that just bothers to research it should understand that any dealer at a gun show is going to require you to undergo a background check. This gun show loophole isn't a thing. It hasn't been a thing. I'd argue that maybe the problem is that it is a thing. You know what I mean? Because all gun laws are infringements as far as I'm concerned, and the fact that you have to jump through all of those hoops to get armed is bull crap. But if we're just speaking about factual information here, there is no gun show loophole. That doesn't exist. But it will not stop them from saying it, and it certainly won't stop leftist Twitter from continuously, to repeat this lie that is this idea that you can just walk into a gun show and just not get a background check. I wish it was that awesome, America. I do.
Pay with cash, no background check.
Yeah, I would love that. That'd be fantastic.
I also like how she mentioned that purportedly 80% of the public is like in support of that happening, as though like what people think is a good idea is actually a good idea, which is really convenient because they control the media and they spread this disinformation and they oversample people who are predisposed or predisposition towards like left-wing beliefs. And then they come out, well, 80% of the public thinks that we're right. It's like, who cares?
Yeah, well, we were listening to this clip and Eric was like, I wasn't polled.
Yeah.
I said, we never are. I've never been polled for any of these. Have you?
Well, no, but I do have experience phone banking. And what I will tell you is that conservatives are so done with pollsters because
They just hang up?
Literally, yeah. I was in Alaska and I was doing phone banking for Dan Sullivan, who's a Republican. And we would call people who were like registered Republicans and they'd be like, what do you want? Hey, we're calling for a poll.
Yeah.
Hang up. Yeah, they don't even.
No, thank you.
Yeah.
I don't want it. Okay. So that was from the White House. Of course, we know, they keep mentioning the ghost guns, because the big problem right now in the country is apparently ghost guns, except it's not. And a lot of people are saying, well, this is mostly just largely rhetoric. There's not a lot that they can do to actually implement these things. But it does give you a good idea of where they're at as far as how they want to slowly chip away at those rights. So at some lawmakers, state lawmakers, like this one, GOP senator from Missouri, called this logic on gun control backwards, and Arizona's governor actually signed a bill protecting state gun laws from federal legislation. There have been several other states who have mentioned that they may want to do that. So let's see, they tweeted out, a representative from Arizona tweeted out, proud to announce that Arizona citizens now have an extra layer of protection regarding the Second Amendment. My bill was signed by Doug Ducey yesterday. So they are trying to create, I guess,
getting on the
sanctuary
offense for
states
once in
for
their
the
damn
Second
life?
Amendment. It only took how long?
Yeah.
70 years.
Yeah. Getting on the offense just once in your life. That's all I've ever asked, is just get on the offense instead of playing on the defense. Definitely in the context of gun rights, the left is just completely owned that conversation for decades.
Well, they
now.
just want common sense.
Oh, that's
how
it all starts, doesn't it?
It's just common sense. If
Just
you don't agree with common sense gun reform,
like
you're
a guy
a horrible person.
told me today, like, you have nothing to hide. What's the big deal?
Right.
What's the worst that can happen? Meanwhile, these idiots will have like Black Lives Matter and all sorts of things, understanding they could somehow connect the dots that like stop and frisk and all of that led to some bad things. Somehow, when it comes to gun rights, that just goes over their heads. So
it's amazing.
Yeah, it is fantastic. Well, yeah, thankfully, gun ownership among a lot of black people are going the opposite way in which they probably think. And I guess they expect for people to be like, well, there's a problem. And then meanwhile, people on the right are like, yeah, well, we've been telling you to get armed for this long time. And they expect people to be offended. I'm pretty sure people have seen that viral tweet of the black guy who was like, come and take a Republicans. And there's a bunch of people, Republicans in the comments like, yeah, dude, you're armed.
Right,
congratulations.
Good. We're glad. No one wants to come take your gun away, guy.
Not us.
Yeah, exactly, John.
Conservatives tend to have this like very like, I can just sit back and everyone else will figure it out mentality. And so, whether it was with things like the bump stocks or with things like this, well, they already have background checks, so we don't need to push back against this. It's like any ground that they gain, even if it's not good or like irrelevant, is still something that we have lost. And so once they take the 30-round magazine, the bump stocks, then they can start focusing on the AR-15s, the semi-automatic. So you actually have to put forth effort to play defense and even go on the offense for things that are stupid, because you have to keep the conversation centered there so it doesn't go towards things that are actually important. And I also bring that up too on my show a lot. Like, can you imagine if we were winning this? Like, we've been slowly losing for the last few decades, but if we were winning, we would have 2-day shipping for AR-15, something like that. Like if we were actually headed.
Would be a convenience store.
Yeah, exactly.
That'd be awesome, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Well, I love online. You can
the AFT, excuse me.
AFT.
As Biden
it is
said,
right. It is AFT. Obviously.
Yeah, I was excited yesterday hearing that the ATF had been abolished, but then replaced by the AFT. So close.
You always notice, even especially, I would say, reporters, people who call themselves journalists. You can always tell who doesn't know what they're talking about as far as goes with guns. And I feel like in order to talk in the public sphere about a particular gun, you need to have actually gone and shot one. Like, they talk about AR-15s as if they're so scary, they're weapons of war. I'm like, you've never shot an AR-15 in your life.
And then the one guy that they had go shoot it, he was a complete drama queen about it.
Yeah.
He was like, my shoulder is bruised, I have PTSD.
Like, what the hell? What kind of a...
And then I think they had like...
That is not a man.
Yeah,
yeah,
right, thank you.
Then they had like, I think a Marine or something did a response video to that where he held it with one hand and put the stock against his nose and he was shooting and it was like nothing.
I love that. I didn't see that. I missed it. All right, we've got more to come. First, we want to thank our sponsor, Raycon. So Raycon has really saved me during the day because I have a lot of, I try to listen to podcasts, news. I try to stay up to date on everything that's going on in the world so that when I walk in here, I can know what the hell I'm talking about when I talk to you guys. Raycon has been there for me, so especially when I have like a really fussy baby at home and he's constantly crying and I'm like, you can keep crying. I'm gonna put in my Raycon so that I can't hear you. Really, they are wireless earbuds. They're very, very affordable. I feel like I could tell you who their largest competitor is, but I'll refer to them as they who shall not be named. They're way better than those guys. They don't have the stems that come out of your ears and like pull your ears down. They fit inside your ear. They've got several different like little plastic parts that are larger and smaller so that you can actually fit them to your ear. I think you guys have some, don't you?
Yes, the lady has some. She loves them.
She loves them.
She absolutely loves them.
They're great. They come in different colors. They're very fashion. They're like very sleek and like they're just great. They're wonderful. You need them, especially, I mean, if you're watching this show, you're a news hound. So you're gonna wanna use them to keep up with your news, keep up with your podcast, listen to some music while you work out, whatever you need. They're very, very affordable. Plus you can get 15% off right now if you go to buyraycon.com/Y. It is BUY, buyraycon.com/Y. Back in a minute. All right, today, a report just came out that Biden has created a commission to study packing the Supreme Court. So obviously this has been, Americans have been polled on this. The majority of them do oppose stacking the Supreme Court, but he's under pressure from activists, according to the report, which is not surprising at all. So the commission will be led by two left-wing partisans who served in the Obama administration. And, again, we were talking about gun rights before in the last segment, and it's like, they're just going to just slowly just chip away at all of your rights. And here it comes, the Supreme Court. Now they've created a commission to study packing it. Which, by the way, can I just say, creating the commissions to study stuff is so annoying. They create a commission to study. It's like, okay, we know that this is what you want to do. You're just trying to, optically, you're just trying to move us there incrementally. And you think that by announcing that you're going to study it, that it's going to do something. What are you going to study?
It's optics. But I'm interested in that because I don't know. I mean, he's kind of said both things, that, talking out both sides of his mouth.
Yeah, if you wait a little bit, he'll just say the opposite.
Yeah, that's true. So you got to give him some time there, because if you do wait, he will say the opposite. So it's going to be interesting to see if that's just for optics and they're just using, wonder where that money's coming from. To
that's
just create
true.
commissions out of their behind. Just say, all right, we'll look into it, right. But they're actually not going to look into it. It's
maybe
another bait switch.
To appease the radical
left.
And
they've done that, for example, with the drug situation. Like where you see like the Kamala Harris's of the world and Joe Biden's like, yeah, we campaign on that. That legalization of marijuana. No, it's
they fired their staffers in the White House.
Obviously that wasn't even so it may just be one of those bait and switch moments, or it may be taking it serious. I guess that's the benefit that you have when you're Joe Biden. You get to take positions at the same time on a campaign trail.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point, because on Twitter there are like accounts titled Biden voters posting their L's, and it's just compilations of just seething. And it just goes to show like everything that's going on right now was all worth it to those people, because Donald Trump was like a little off-putting with his rhetoric, and so they were willing to like put Joe Biden in the White House, and they're not even getting the things that they wanted. Like he'll kind of placate them a little bit by opening these commissions, but like, is he actually going to do it? Probably not.
Yeah, well, and that's a great point too, because we saw Black Lives Matter come out. They wrote him a letter.
Totally ignore.
Yeah, I mean. You got to believe, though, that eventually this is all going to come to a head, because they have these radicalized people on the left side who are used to getting their way, who are being emboldened and enabled by the rest of them. At some point, they're going to expect something from them, right? Like they keep promising them all of, right? Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. All right, another headline of the day. Top Republicans on 2 House committees are pressing President Biden's coronavirus rescue plan czar, because we have to have a czar for everything now, to review the $2 billion fund that New York created this week at giving relief money to illegal immigrants in the state. So they said that the New York program will offer one-time payments of up to $15,600 to undocumented immigrants, which is, they're just illegal immigrants. We don't need to say the undocumented, who lost their jobs during the pandemic, which, I mean, that's quite a bit of money that you would get to be rewarded with for entering the country illegally.
Isn't that more money than Americans were given too with the stimulus?
I believe so.
All
I mean,
combined.
Right, yeah. Well, certainly, combined. So, one may call it a magnet, may call that a magnet, but maybe part of the reason why, I don't know, we just have record numbers of immigrants coming through our
and that's the thing
borders.
too. A lot of people on the right tend to like Ronald Reagan was even guilty of this, frankly, thinking that these immigrants are coming to America because they just want a better life and they love America. It's like, when you say a better life, you just mean they're going to get on welfare, which 62% of them do, or they're going to reap this benefit.
Right.
So Americans are paying into this system and they're not withdrawing as much, but these people aren't even paying in. I mean, you can find weird data that shows that sometimes but still on the net, they're taking more out of the system than they're contributing. So it's not that they love America and they're really just studying, James Madison, and it's no, they see it as an opportunity and they're frankly exploiting it.
And by the way, most of the time, whenever they come over here and they're exploiting those opportunities, they're also kicking people of color out of jobs, which the left is going to have to figure out where they want to go here, because they keep talking about how they're the champion of, blacks and Hispanics and all minorities. They are the champion, but they're also letting all of these illegal immigrants come in, just releasing them. They're just dumping them into our states. And historically, they've taken over minorities' jobs. So
yeah, I mean, the immigration thing is always interesting. I think particularly that instance is one that I think, objectively speaking, no matter where you're at on the issue, I would hope that you have some sort of issue with. I've always said, I mean, I absolutely prefer that if you're going to be here, undocumented, whatever, at least if you're not taking money from the system, whatever, you know what I mean? People will say they have issues with it, but the issue comes when you have things like that. You have refugee resettlement programs, stuff like that, where they take money out of your pockets and your kids' pockets, and then they redistribute it to them. That's the problem with it. And like I say, I say taxation stuff. I got a shirt on today. They actually say that, and it's things like that. Why we attribute that actual claim is because you don't get to make that decision. And it ain't just that. We've talked about Rand Paul does that report every year, where your money is going to spending it on lizards, trying to run on treadmills and all kinds of stupid stuff. That's where your money is going. So that absolutely doesn't surprise me, but that shows some of the issues that I don't care where you're at on the issue, even the libertarian position on immigration, where that objectively is a problem, because again, you're talking about stealing from other people and then distributing to folks that haven't even paid into the system, if that's how you approach it.
Did you guys see that the Biden administration is going to continue building some of the wall?
No.
I did see that. I did saw. Now, of course, is that going to get covered? Is that racist?
Is so racist.
Yeah, no. They get to do it. They get to do it all the time. And I mean, look, Dave, we already talked about Obama and his whole
deporter-in-chief.
Deporter-in-chief. Obama wasn't playing them games down there, and it's about rhetoric for them, and they understand that it isn't about what it is that they do or even what it is that they actually advocate. That has nothing to do with it. It's that if they can just say, hey guys, we are for you, we will support you, we love you, and so much, they can literally be slapping you across the face, and they'll be like, yeah, thanks. He loves me.
It's true.
Stockholm syndrome is what it's called.
Knowing that, I better not hear any anti-Biden rhetoric from any left-wing people criticizing him for building the wall. Shut up. That's your president. You respect his leadership. He's not a racist. How dare you?
Let me ask you though, John, just before we go to break, as a last question, Eric mentioned, the deporter-in-chief, Obama. He was able to get away with that just fine because it wasn't as much of a talking point then. We seemed to agree, hey, we should probably not let a bunch of strangers into our country without vetting them. The left has moved the ball so freaking much in just since then. in
Yeah.
what, 10, however long
Not
it is.
even that long, man.
So how have they been able to do that so masterfully?
Well, because they don't have to be held accountable. And Barack Obama, I think that figure was even exaggerated because he changed the definition of deportation to just being like turned away instead of like actually like deported.
But even
how
if
we
you
would understand
consider
it.
removals, he still outpaced Bush, he outpaced Reagan, he outpaced all of them. So even then, he still was the deporter in chief. That's true, though.
And he at least wanted the optics for that,
definition.
you know?
He didn't care. It wasn't like, he was like, whatever.
Right.
And he even campaigned on a lot of that stuff. So Obama got away with it. I'm telling you, when you suave and you have black and you wear a pantsuit, man, you can get away with a lot, man, a lot.
I think that they're probably going to end up abandoning their black base and their voters because they know that they're only a few more elections away from giving these people like voting rights, and then we're never going to win another federal election again because 9 out of 10 of these people will vote for Democrats unfailingly. And if we had more cultural control and we could set narratives as opposed to just reacting to them, maybe we could start to change these people's minds a little bit. But we've been crushed into the ground to where now we're just like, please don't.
Right.
Like, please, for old time's sake, don't make us like obsolete.
I feel like I have to go to break now because we don't want to get Eric started on culture.
I mean, hey, 2020 was my year, baby. I've been telling y'all this for a long time, man. It's just me saying I was right.
Yeah.
I was right the whole year.
I've been saying this for years now. Thanks for finally listening, idiots. All right, we got to take a break. Back in a minute.
Let's get on the culture stuff. You hit it right on the head.
Well, I just got a note during the break that this is most likely the entire segment that we just did on this one video that just was removed from YouTube will probably also be removed as well. So the whole conversation that we just had, now this is, again, this is why BlazeTV and becoming a subscriber is so important. You can watch the full uncensored version on blazetv.com/news. If you're a subscriber, you already know this. You get all of this content that all of the big tech overlords don't want you watching. For instance, just in case, if you guys have been tuning in and you missed the segment that we just did, it's kind of important because, we're just talking about a lot of doctors and what their advice is. I mean, like, really, really credible doctors and what their advice is. I don't want to tell you what that advice is now because I want to make sure that you know that you need to go to blazetv.com/news to get that advice. This is where we're at, you guys. This is the world that we're living in. You cannot give any sort of doctor advice on big tech. You got to go over to blazetv.com. It's sad. It's very sad, but that's the world we're living in. By the way, before you leave YouTube, don't forget Young Rippa59 and John Doyle over here. That wasn't, you need to